Hi, everyone. Welcome back to episode number 2 for O.Z.K Studios. Today's episode is actually going to be very special. We're going to be exploring the concept of Thanksgiving. What is it about, the historical context, and what it means to us today? And we all have each other's Thanksgivings to celebrate or learn more from. But where exactly does Thanksgiving come from in the first place? So, a little bit about me. I actually immigrated to the United States about 20 something years ago, 26 years ago. And back in the United Arab Emirates, where I grew up, it was a very diverse country where it welcomed every single person of all kinds, all religions, all ethnicities, everything. And we celebrated their holidays as well. However, the one brand new thing that I learned after moving to the United States, I did not understand what Thanksgiving was. Because I started high school for the very first time in the United States, there was a lot of talk on, of course, Christmas holidays, winter break, and also a holiday called Thanksgiving. I did not know what that was. All I knew and was educated on was the fact that Thanksgiving is a time when families or, people who you love get together, eat a big fat turkey and some side dishes to go along with it as a sense of comfort food, as a sense of community, as a sense of let's bring our families together from wherever one day out of the year, aside from Christmas, and eat this food that was very foreign to me and I had never seen before. So from there, I didn't really think too much about Thanksgiving and the history of it. All I did was try to understand what kind of food people eat during this holiday, because food is exciting to everybody, but not really where the customs come from. And that's basically one of the reasons why I want to do an episode on Thanksgiving, specifically to learn about the traditions, specifically to learn the good history, the bad history, and what it means right now and how it became to what it is, even the deep rooted roots that nobody really talks about. And I know that a lot of other people are curious about it too, because now that Thanksgiving is becoming a little bit more commercialized, more people outside of the United States or even Canada are learning more about this holiday, especially if people outside are watching American TV shows that do focus on Thanksgiving holidays, right? So I want to pass the mic over to Shao, who has some interesting bullet points or information that we can learn from regarding the history and the very unfortunate events that took place in making this holiday possible.
So in America, Thanksgiving is a federal holiday and it's usually celebrated on the fourth Thursday of November each year. And it's widely recognized as a day of feasting, gratitude, and where families gather. And it has evolved over the past 400 years to become an American tradition. And while many enjoy meals featuring roast turkey, mashed potato, cranberries, the history behind Thanksgiving offers a more complex and sometimes a somber reflection of its origins. The modern celebration of Thanksgiving centers around giving thanks, and traditionally it's surrounded with native foods grown in America, such as turkey, squash, corn. In addition to the meals, customs often include attending charitable activities, providing meals for those in need, and watching televised events featuring parades and football games. And the holiday also marks the start of the American holiday season, we normally known as Black Friday. It's the day following Thanksgiving, and it's widely considered the busiest shopping day of the year. So, to begin why Thanksgiving started, let's go back to the 1600s. So, the roots of Thanksgiving dates back to the pilgrims who came from Europe. These pilgrims escaped Europe because of prosecution from the Church of England. They didn't agree with the way that the church was running things. So they came onto a boat called the Mayflower and arrived at Massachusetts. And that's where the pilgrims met Native Americans. And with their help, they were able to survive and pass on this tradition of Thanksgiving. Well, that's what everyone thinks happened. But there's actually a darker history to that. So these pilgrims arrived in Massachusetts And they actually didn't bring a lot of food or livestock with them. And they arrived 6 weeks just before winter. So things were looking grim for them. However, they were able to befriend a local native called Tisquantum, also known as Squanto, who speaks English. And with this help of him and his local Native American slash Indian tribes, they were able to learn how to plant corn, fish, and it greatly increased their chance of survival. And so later on, they were able to make a feast, and this is known as Thanksgiving. But actually, the establishment of Thanksgiving as an official US holiday came much later during the Civil War in the 1800s. This was in November 1863 when President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed it a national holiday, hoping to improve relations between the northern and southern states, as well as between the US government and Native American tribes. And while Thanksgiving offers an opportunity to reflect on family and gratitude, its historical context reveals a deeper and often overlooked narrative of Native American disposition and survival. And, the holiday embodies both the values Americans cherish today and the importance of acknowledging the complex and difficult histories that it has shaped.
I appreciate you sharing that information with us on where their roots are. And I would love to know what input Teresa has regarding Thanksgiving in Canada.
Thank you so much. We have a quite a deep history, although it's very, very young. Canada is a young country in the world of everything. Back in 1578 was when the first one was held. It was anywhere from a midweek in April to a Thursday in November until 1957. And the Canadian government then officially declared that Thanksgiving would occur on the second Monday in October. And of course, harvest, which is something that is imperative, again, with Global Food Network, harvest times, agricultural times are incredibly important. So for us, we have, because we're in the Northern Hemisphere and because of the latitude that we're at, we have temperatures that can be colder. And as well, Canada in itself, we are up into the Arctic, which goes back to the history of everything. So for us, the harvest is in June for the winter wheats and all of that, and it can go into November. However, that is the history and the reason why Canada, for the most part, celebrates or honors Thanksgiving at an earlier month than the United States does. Now, interestingly enough, as well, the history, the first Thanksgiving by Europeans, and I very much understand in terms, I'm going to just not just take a pause, but I'm going to say I'm Canadian. And by that, what I mean is I'm Heinz 57. I am on my mother's side, I'm British, Finnish, and Scottish. And when I say Finnish, that means that I am what's called from the Sami. It's a very small, very unique uh, Scandinavian. And Finnish, of course, is very prevalent in Thunder Bay, surprisingly enough, as well here in Vancouver on Laskiti Island. On my father's side, Czechoslovakian and Italian. So thereby the history of the first Thanksgiving by Europeans in North America was held, which the first that was held in North America was held by Sir Martin Frobisher. When I was growing up, we learned a lot about the explorers. It was something that was just at the time, not only it's something I remember, but we all explore. We all start with our home country and we all travel out or we move and all of the rest. So whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, the explorers in 1578, they celebrated communion because in terms the explorers that came and they landed in what is now Nunavut, which is a First Nations territory. And I'm doing my best to not only state the right words and names, we have a lot of not only history, but some of it is not as enjoyable. It's not honorable. And that, though, to state what history was and to state it correctly, I feel and believe is important. And it's how we learn and it's how we improve. Because I agree with you, Noni, that sometimes the holidays that have been created off of the hearts of people have been turned into holidays when there was great strife. Now, at that time, they celebrated communion and expressed thanks through their ship chaplain. And into 1606, without going into too much more history, but in 1606, it was they wanted to create this ordre de bon ton. So again, we are seeing the reality of something that is not enjoyable for the people that are either oppressed or the people who are simply there living, and then people who come in and people who are explorers, people who have maybe been given a job or they've been told that if they don't come back with spices, with this, with that, then that is their head. And I know this is maybe controversial for me to say, but because I am all about global food and the everything about the history of why we have food, where we have it, and how we have it. And so for myself, I grew up in a family where we are carnivores. We do have turkey. We do have the sweet potatoes and all of that kind of stuff, the vegetables and that. And it though has a darker, not only history, but also today, to bring it full circle, today we need to be mindful because our First Nations throughout Canada, they have not only gone through treaties, they've worked diligently for their champion to their ancestors, just as we, as today, we would champion any one of our ancestors. So again, that's just the history. And for me, the modern day of Thanksgiving, as I say, is the second Monday in October. And for many of us, especially in hospitality, because we work on that weekend, it's known as Friendsgiving for us in hospitality.
Friendsgiving is becoming a more popular and more popular word every single day. I think with the way our families are structured right now and nobody living next to each other right now, we're all about Friendsgiving versus Thanksgiving. Because I think you're more thankful for your friends at times than your own family. So that was, I know I'm speaking real language here that a lot of people may be really afraid to talk out loud. But you know what? It's okay because we're all human beings and we all have our opinions and feedback and thought process. And Friendsgiving is actually definitely more valuable to me than Thanksgiving. So appreciate you sharing the history of Canadian traditions and the harvest and the history behind that as well. I did not realize that Thanksgiving went back all the way in the 15th century. So that is a pretty old custom that we have extremely commercialized for all the wrong reasons. So I'm glad that we're able to educate our audience and ourselves because I didn't know that. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us didn't know that. But being around all of you feels like I'm around food historians. And that's always such a refreshing thing to know and learn from. So thank you, all of you. So, Jackie, and now that you've heard the history of both American Thanksgiving and the dark roots of both American and, of course, Canadian Thanksgiving, you were sandwiched, no pun intended, right in between. So how is it like in Michigan that borders not only the United States but also Canada? How was it like that for you?
I love, Noni, that you said that we border the United States because Michigan is part of the United States, my dear. Now, before this holiday even became commercialized, Noni, it was whitewashed. that's what I know from Michigan Thanksgiving is it was, okay, class, we're going to divide half and half. You're going to be, and back then, unfortunately, they just said Indians. They did not say Native Americans back then. And you're going to be the pilgrims. Who wants to be on what team? And you used to dress up and you'd either put a little sticker of a turkey on your head or you'd put a little headdress that you got to color. It was so whitewashed, guys. It was so sad. Now, my favorite memory as a kid was though we'd get to put our little hands, they were much tinier than this, on paper, and you got to trace your fingers and you got to make turkeys out of them. That was one of my happy memories as a kid. One of the things we did as families back then, because again, very whitewashed, it was all let's come and celebrate the gathering of the United States, when they were first explored here. We would do food with our huge extended family. And looking back, I remember now it was not all just warm and fuzzy. So when you're talking Friendsgiving, you think these warm and fuzzy, oh my gosh, everybody's happy being together. Back then, even though there was so much family in one room, the kids couldn't go into the kitchen. The kids had to sit at the kiddie table. You had to fight about not sitting next to that uncle or not being by the person that was going to make weird noises or slurp their food. So there was a lot of tension, even though we were supposed to be grateful and happy back then. And then in Michigan, Michigan is notorious for being a hunting state. So a lot of the guys would ditch because it was hunting season over the Thanksgiving holiday, or they would come back halfway through the meal and they'd be all stinky from being out in the woods. Those are the memories I have as a kid. So I thought it was supposed to be so happy because we were celebrating, the first people that stepped onto American soil and they were welcomed by these wonderful Native Americans. And oh, it was so warm and fuzzy and wonderful. And then reality happened, and you started learning just how tragic the history of that holiday is. And then to see the commercialization, like you talked about, Noni, why would we be celebrating things that was literal torture, that was literal slaughter of humans, fellow humans? So I love the term Friendsgiving. Now, for me now that I'm older and I have kids that are older and I still have my immediate family, we do usually try to come together for a meal, but we talk about what are we thankful for in our life right now. So we don't talk about, oh, we're talking about the history and all the wonderful things that happened hundreds of years ago. We talk about why are we thankful right now? What are we grateful for? What is something that might have been a challenge? And how are we working to overcome that? And we're thankful that there's a couple of us that live all within about a mile and a half of each other. Not all families have that experience. And I am very much aware of my privilege to have those kind of memories and to continue having those memories. Now, I'm not opposed to traveling too. I think it's so important to not only get that cultural awareness of other holidays, but to get yourself out into the world to realize those stories you heard as a kid, the things that you were maybe taught in school, maybe even your family didn't know that they were not even telling you some of the true stories and the true history. There's more out there in the world. So those are some of my memories, Noe. Those are some of the things that I grew up thinking. Those are some of the things that have thankfully changed for me now. But I know certain schools are still doing the same things that they were doing 20, 30, 40, 60 years ago. And we've got to get the word out of reality. And you can celebrate, like, I don't like any commercialized holiday. I think you should celebrate every day. Every day should be Friendsgiving. Every day should be Mother's Day. Every day should be something that reminds us that we're all here together. We're all breathing air together. It's reason to celebrate every single day. So, Noni, thank you for letting me speak on this holiday that is so tragic, but yet if we could turn it and start that healing process and take ownership and celebrate the true meaning of being thankful for what we have, it would be a whole different capacity in a discussion.
Thank you, Jackie. Love getting the different perspective of the holiday being whitewashed, as you said, because I think it's true. And especially for a majority of us in this group right now are minority. And I feel like a lot of the times when majority does something, the minority has to do that too, because that's what it's supposed to be. And I don't think we really educate ourselves till we actually spend that 1 minute or the 5 minutes of our time learning about something that is fairly new to us instead of just accepting whatever it is that is given to us. And that's where I kind of draw the line because I've seen that. Okay, I don't like pumpkin pie. I'm so sorry for people over here who like pumpkin pie. I I despise it. I don't like the pumpkin flavor, but it was basically like shoved down our throats when we initially moved to the US celebrating Thanksgiving. And why should I eat disgusting food on a holiday that's supposed to be happy? And that's where another perspective comes in about the whitewashing thing. And Native Americans are not white or whitewashed. And it would be really awesome to celebrate the indigenous people on that day versus, as Jackie, you mentioned, the whitewashed version of it. And I'm actually glad on a second note that you mentioned that because before the recording, I mentioned that in San Francisco specifically, the Native Americans or the indigenous people, they actually have a tradition that they go on the Alcatraz. I'm sure everybody here has heard of Alcatraz before. And actually, one of my wonderful colleagues, she is half Native American. She's the one who told me about this because I didn't know. And what she said was it's Alcatraz Indigenous People Sunrise Gathering Thanksgiving 2024. And that is something, it's called the Day of Mourning event here in Alcatraz. And they spend the entire day over there. I encourage people who are listening to this podcast to actually do some research, go to Google and figure out exactly where the Native American population within their respective states or cities go to for the day of mourning and go join them and understand them, learn about the hurt that their ancestors had gone through during that day. And, have a meal with them if they are having a meal that day. So I encourage all of us to do that. Luckily, I have one for San Francisco on my phone. So I'm happy to share that with my fellow San Franciscans. So that is fantastic. But I do encourage everybody over here to do the same research based on the state that you live in. So before I get to Sama, I actually want to hear Kim and Xiao's perspectives on Thanksgiving because they live here in San Francisco with me and they are born and raised Americans. So I want to know, as Chinese Americans, or in Kim's case, Chinese and Filipino Americans, how did you celebrate Thanksgiving from the Asian perspective, the East Asian perspective?
Thank you, Noni, for mentioning that on Thanksgiving, it's also the National Day of Mourning for the Native Americans. And moving on to my experience as an East Asian in America celebrating Thanksgiving, I also immigrated here to the US. When we arrived, we did not eat turkey or pumpkin pie or stuffing. I think we just ate whatever we had. I guess in place of turkey, we had chicken. But we would have a feast. We would celebrate with family, extensive other families, and we would share food. And just like Jackie, I felt like we think of it as a warm kind of gathering, but in reality, there are a lot of layers. It's not always happy, but in general, for Thanksgiving in my family, we do gather and we do share food. My first time actually having a traditional Thanksgiving meal was actually only a few years ago, and it was like such a eye-opening for me. And I also really appreciate their way of having Thanksgiving. My friend who is from Irvine, who is white, she celebrates it the traditional way, and I was actually really grateful to be invited to her family and to be able to enjoy the way that she enjoys Thanksgiving as well. And I want to pass it on to Kimberly and ask her perspective and her experience from Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Xiao, and thanks for highlighting how people celebrate, mourn, and acknowledge this day. I think I have a mix of like everyone's kind of like celebration. So as long as I can remember, my family hosted Thanksgiving for my dad's side of the family, who actually immigrated here over a boat from Hong Kong over to San Francisco. And then with my mom having a background in the Philippines, it's like an integration of Chinese and American culture in that one day. So we'll order Chinese food, have it all catered, and come over to our house. And then my mom cooks the turkey and the mashed potatoes, and we bring that all over to the table. So we all get to sit down and share each other's stories. And usually I don't see these sides of the family until like other celebrations like Chinese New Year and the holidays. So it's a really nice time to get together, especially with my dad having six siblings and children after children. So like last time in 2019, we had around like 42 people in our house. Yeah. And fortunately and unfortunately, every 7 years, it's on my birthday. So I get a mix of celebration of the connections of with my family, but also like celebrating my birthday. So that's been interesting.
I like how Kim gets two holidays around the same time. Good for you. And I'm glad that you got to feast over multinational cuisines in front of you. So I really appreciate sharing that. And I think I can relate a little bit more to Xiao because she did mention that she immigrated. But before we even get to that part, I want to get Michelle's perspective on how she and her daughter celebrate Thanksgiving in Ohio.
In Ohio, it's really different. The way that my daughter and I celebrate it today versus what I experienced. Well, I've never been able to give my daughter what I experienced. But because that hasn't been able to happen, like we really just kind of do our own thing. But in the aspect of the reason we're gathered and having this conversation and food, and what I'm going to say, obviously, this is every single day of my life. So what I'm going to say is my daughter and I experience this 365 days, a year. But Thanksgiving is a rough one, is that my daughter does have an eating disorder. It's called avoidant restrictive food intake. And yeah, like my kid will starve herself. And people have said it's picky eating, but the reality is that it's really just who she is, and I embrace it. So I don't make her go to places because it's not just the physical plate of food I'm going to put in front of her. We could walk into somewhere and whatever the aroma is, I might be like, oh my God, I can't wait to get a plate of that. My kid could potentially have a full mental breakdown because the aromas may be too overwhelming, or so I personally, I mean, Thanksgiving gets to be a little more, I have to be cautious, like it's the textures, it's the smells, every aspect. Like, listen, these manufacturers, they change their package. My daughter will look at a package that we've been cooking for the last 18 months and she'll look at it and they changed the package and she ain't even gonna eat it. And then like I try to only take her, I don't have many that are inclusive of her needs. It's like, oh well, she could just deal with her stuff. Yeah, I'm not gonna put her in that environment. So we just choose to do things alone. Like, well, whatever she wants to eat that day. Like in her mind, it's like, let me go shopping. And I don't do Black Friday. I can't. Well, besides the what it's been monetized to be, I can't be around groups of people that are like that. So for us, it's Thanksgiving is that we give each other thanks and gratefulness every day of the year. And I just make it inclusive for my child.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. When we talk about inclusivity, I think people often do forget about that. So when you talk about your child, we tend to, imagine and expect children just to be running around, playing around with their parents, bothering them in the kitchen, stealing a slice of pumpkin pie or, ooh, stuffing, let me go get some, right? But I don't think a lot of people really realize that children do often have some kind of an eating disorder. I'm not saying all children do, but some of them do. And that is a very difficult situation to be around, whether it's something that they cannot eat or if it's something that they binge eat. And that is two different sides of an eating disorder that I don't think a lot of people acknowledge. And holiday times, when people do come together, people do have different varieties of food, aromas, as you said, Michelle, different smells and textures, like Teresa and I, you've discussed quite a bit in our food diversity rooms. A lot of that can make or break someone's experience, whether they have a disorder or not. Whether they're picky eaters or not picky eaters, doesn't matter. They can make or break someone. And I think going back to Jackie's point, where not every family is privileged that way, and not every family has the resources to have a good time together. It's not just about the food, it's having a good time and being comfortable around the people you're having this experience with and the actual experience itself. So almost every single person in this room, I can relate to all of you. With Kim, I can imagine the multitude of different cuisines around, depending on the situation or the occasion. Shao, I can relate to you because I'm an immigrant myself, a little later in life than you, of course, but definitely that experience is there. Michelle, I totally get what you're talking about your daughter. I totally get that because I was not allowed to eat food sometimes. Not because I wanted to or not wanted to, but the situation was different for me. And then Jackie, the privilege is there, the whitewashing is there. That was drained upon me as an immigrant when I came. So I totally get where you're coming from. And then Teresa, the historical aspects of Thanksgiving. I mean, wow. The intensity of that was intense. I mean, I don't know what other word to use describing that, but you get the idea. I got to learn different things about the team members today and what their life has been, what their experience has been, and almost everyone I can relate to. So that's exactly why I think this is a good topic to talk about and share stories about. And now it's going to be even more fascinating because we're about to embark on a journey that I never expected I would have to embark with all these wonderful people by traveling all the way to India and learning about Thanksgiving from an Indian person's perspective. And also, since Thanksgiving is not necessarily celebrated really or even mentioned or talked about that much within the South Asian subcontinent, what are some of the holidays that could be equivalent or considered equivalent to Thanksgiving? So I will give the mic over to Sama.
Thank you so much, Noni, and thank you so much, everyone who shared the history and how was it celebrating at your own houses and homes. This is not even something that people usually talk about, and especially for me, I did not even know the history. So this is really fascinating, and this is really heartbreaking at the same time to listen to how things were in the beginning and how people have started to adapt it currently. And considering the aspect of being thankful for whatever you are, at least at this point in time, India is like a very, very big country when it comes to festivals and celebrations. There are like festivals almost every month because it's a very diverse country with so many different religions. So there are celebrations almost every month. And while I cannot talk about all of it, there are a couple of festivals that I do want to talk about. One of which is Eid. So there are two types of Eid. And not going much into detail, the way that we celebrate it is we cook food, we cook sweets, and then we have friends and families over. And it's, again, like I said, India has a lot of religions, and it's not just limited to any specific religions. We have people and my friends coming over from different religions just to celebrate it. And just to go back a little bit on how Noni and Michelle said about having eating disorders or being respectful of people who, let's say, who are vegetarians or they're vegans. So we kind of try and make food that they will be able to enjoy whilst we are enjoying the food that we like. So it's not like they feel excluded. It's like an inclusivity where everyone can enjoy at the same time. So that's one thing that we do in Eid. And then there is another festival called Raksha Bandhan, where it's celebrated within siblings. And now it's kind of, more diversified, where even if you are not a sibling, it's between a brother and a sister, right? So even if you're not a sibling, but you look up to someone as a brother, you can celebrate it with them. There's a band that you tie around the wrist of your brother or who you look up to as a brother. And that's like respect and thankful that a sister is being to a brother, that thank you for protecting me, or I look up to you. And there's a purity within the bond that we have. And I'm thankful for everything that you do. So that is another festival that is also celebrated. When it comes to food, we have the spices that everyone craves for. So it's almost a feast every month, at every festival, at everybody's house, for every celebration.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sama. And I can relate to one of the festivals that Sama's talking about, which is Eid. So I grew up in the United Arab Emirates, and it's a predominantly Muslim country. And not that there's no other people of different religions and all that stuff. I saw Christmas trees in the mall, the same place that celebrates Eid as well. So everything is included. Nobody's missing out on anything. No one feels left out of anything. So Eid actually is a holiday where families do come together, predominantly Muslim holiday. People come together, and there's something called, and somehow you can probably clarify this a little bit. It's called Eid, EIDY. And that is where parents give money to their kids as a present.
Oh my God, I cannot believe I forgot about the fun part of Eid. That is the only thing that kids wait. As soon as the parents are back from mosques and after their prayer, we are like, give me the money. And it's like our birthright to ask for that money. And now it's kind of a fun tradition, that not a tradition but something that I do, even if I'm a grown up. I still ask my parents, even if it's just, let's say, $10. I'm like, I shake their hand, I wish them Eid Mubarak, and then I'm not gonna leave their hand unless they give me that $10.
That was great. That was great. So knowing that during Eid time, our families get together, and I don't practice any religion. It's just something that was dawned upon us. So when we would celebrate Eid as an example, we would have like a festivity or festive or feast. And the whole dining table would be covered in like different types of South Asian or Persian cuisine, at least in my home. And it was very like, okay, you go get your food, grab a table, watch TV, gossip, whatever you want to do with your family. And I understand the gathering of family, and that's what I tried to apply after immigrating to the United States when I did not know anything about Thanksgiving. And literally, the first November, when I sat down with family, that was the most confusing thing ever in the whole wide world. Because why do I have this big fat turkey sitting in front of me? That is possibly the spiciest turkey I will ever eat, because I don't want to eat a turkey like that. There were mashed potatoes, there was kebabs, and then there was roti for some reason. And I did not realize that Thanksgiving could be a multicultural event. And then the next year, I decided to go to a one of my friend's house to see how Thanksgiving was over there. Completely different experience. They had mac and cheese in a way that I've never seen before. They had cornbread that I had never even knew existed. And then they had collard greens. Never knew that existed. There was no such thing as pumpkin pie, but they had sweet potato pie. And their stuffing was some Fixins. And that included bacon bits and things that I could not consume. So that was another experience. And then following that, it was a whole different thing where we had a potluck. So Thanksgiving was very confusing for me. Like, can you please tell me exactly what is expected for this holiday or tradition? I did not understand that till about 5 years ago, till I met my partner. And he and his family are completely white. Okay. And the concept of whitewashing is very apparent over here because turkey has no flavor in it. It's only salt, barely any drops of pepper. Then there is bland mac and cheese, which I have to add Cajun seasoning to. Then they do two types of stuffing. One is with bacon bits and one is without, so I could eat it. At least the thoughtfulness is there. So I'm very thankful for that. And, there is pumpkin pie, but in his family, no one really cares about pumpkin pie. So they replace it with chocolate pie. So you could say that living in the United States for 26 years, I still don't know what's eaten in Thanksgiving holiday season. So I'm glad that we are all here to share our unique experiences, regardless of where we are located and regardless of whether we actually celebrate Thanksgiving or not, or if we celebrate something else instead. And I think that is just an equally important occasion, as long as we're happy with the people who we're with and we appreciate their freaking company.
So I just wanted to, like, you are making me nostalgic of my childhood. And something about myself is that I am Puerto Rican. And so I got two things I'm gonna share real quick that really go with food. And the first one is that apparently when the mother married the father, the grandmother ensured that my mother was going to be able to feed her son a full Puerto Rican meal. So every Thanksgiving, like when we were growing up, it was literally both. So like it was a feast, and we wasn't raised around extended families, so they would invite over the friends they had made when they moved to here to Ohio. So it would be like the mashed potatoes, the macaroni and cheese, turkey, ham, everything, the whole thing, all kinds of desserts. But then I think what, and it stands out and it just makes it different is that then we had the Spanish rice and the panille, and it got, to the sauces and then all of those Spanish dishes. And like another aspect of it is that we grew up in very low income neighborhoods where I always thought our family's dysfunctionness was how the whole country was. I didn't know that things were experienced. So for us, Thanksgiving was our parents were going together and we were told to get outside. So it was all the kids that was coming with all the parents, like it was you 4-year old, and and we were out sun up, sundown, street lights, like, that's how I was raised. So and I miss that for my kid. I gotta beg her to go outside. Like we couldn't wait to get, and I like those are like kind of the nostalgic moments that it brings up. But then one more contribution to the food aspect is my mom. She was an amazing cook, and all this food was delicious. But there was a medical incident, and she actually went into a coma for 3 months. When she came out of a coma, she wasn't the same person, and the food wasn't the same. So then the gatherings weren't the same because nobody wanted it, if that makes sense. I just wanted to add that, like, to talk about the food aspects and obviously the nostalgia.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think food in general, regardless of what holiday it is, really, it could be anything. I think it can make or break an experience because it seems like it doesn't have to be Thanksgiving, but let's say that you come to my home, I invite you to my home, and my most famous dish is Cajun shrimp. I'm just making that up. What if my most famous dish that I cooked was Cajun shrimp? And I'm telling you all of that, and you're all excited to come and try the Cajun shrimp that I made. But then the moment you take one bite, you're like, ugh, this is overdone. This is burnt. Ugh. And it could be just be a mistake on my part. Maybe I just, some things happen, right? And then you all decide not to come to my house anymore because the way I cook is horrible. When it could just be a situational thing that happened. So when you come again, you eat the same exact Cajun shrimp. It's the best thing you've ever had. So you come back, right? So it's not just about that, even though food can make and break something, but it's also about the person who is creating that experience for you. It's about the people creating that experience for you. And also, even if the food sucks, at least if the company is good or if you know the person you're with, then your guests will actually come back and give you chance number two. But if they don't care about you, then no matter how amazing your dish is, they're not going to care about your dish either. They will just come for 5 minutes, grab everything you have, and then go. And we don't want our holidays to be that way, right? And I think, Michelle, that is one of the things that I did pick up, which is a hard reality for a lot of people. And I've seen that from my mom myself. Okay, so I'm going to torture Sama right now, and I'm going to ask her, tell us about some of the festive foods that you eat or consume during Eid.
I think everyone knows about this. I mean, even if it's just the name of the dish, biryani. It's, oh my God, it's something about biryani that once you eat it, you have to fall asleep. And we don't even, add something that will make you fall asleep, but it's just too heavy in a sense that it's, first of all, it's delicious. Biryani is like made of rice mixed with spices, and then if it's a vegetarian biryani, if it's a veg biryani, you add in vegetables. But if it's a chicken or a mutton biryani, you add in chicken or mutton, obviously. And then you mix it with spices and you steam it. Noni, I hate you for this. I swear to God. My mouth has started to water. But once it's cooked, you usually eat it with raita. A raita is made of curd, chopped onions, coriander, and chopped tomatoes. And then you mix it all together with a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar. And then you eat it with the biryani. So if it's too spicy for someone, they can make it a little.
Yeah. So I love to torture Sama that way because if I get her to think about her favorite foods, I can get more information about those foods out of her. And I think every single time I did that, I've been successful. And I think I just proved my point. So she went into a full recipe mode of biryani and what it can be made with. And if anybody else wants to try that out, please do. Biryanis, I think they come in different forms and types, and it's actually something that is flavorful. And I think mutton, what Sama mentioned, is actually goat meat. In the US, we don't really eat goat that much, but we eat sheep or lamb for carnivores. So that's where the whole thing is coming from. But thank you for sharing that, Sama. And I'm actually very curious about the Chinese and the Chinese and maybe the Filipino cuisines that are also included in the Thanksgiving meals for both Xiao and Kim.
I feel like my Thanksgiving is very typical or like not very exciting. Like I said, instead of turkey, we would use chicken. And of course, this is just my experience, but in my family, if we don't have turkey, then we would have like a Hainanese chicken. It's not a roasted chicken, it's like a boiled chicken and it's seasoned with garlic, scallion oil, and as for like the other side dishes, I don't know how to describe it because I feel like it's like my everyday foods. But if it's a special day, then we would buy roasted pork belly from the Chinese restaurant. And some like other food would include roasted duck. We normally don't do the typical American Chinese takeout food. My family is very traditional, so we make everything in house. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but but our food is very simple, at least for my family. And I'm curious about Kimberly's side. She talks about Chinese takeout and also Filipino food.
Yeah, very much non-traditional. We're very much the takeout kind of specialties with our food because we got to feed a lot of mouths. So we got the simple like fried rice, we got the chow mein, and sometimes we get fried chicken. That's like the special way that they do it, which is like just huge pieces of of chicken legs. And then my grandma would make her special sticky rice. She would bring in her own like rice cooker, all specially made by herself, which was delicious. And I always look forward to that every year. On the times when we didn't were able to celebrate with my dad's side of the family, we would take my great aunts who were from the Philippines. And we don't usually do traditional foods, but my grandma was like, she majored in home economics, so she made her own recipes. So we have a special one which is called a pineapple pie, which is like pineapple cream and like a nice like whipped topping over there. And then a baked macaroni, which is like layers of macaroni, different sausages, and just a huge layer of American cheese on top, which was very delicious.
That is awesome. I would love to see what that feast looks like. And the fact that you said your grandmother majored in home economics is so nostalgic for me because my mom majored in home economics. And because of that, she was the chef known in town. So people would stand in line and they would be willing to pay high dollar for it too because she's a talented chef. So lately for me, what Thanksgiving has been, I go to my partner's house, I eat their very bland food, and then after that, when I finally get a chance to go home, I basically try to order some Indian food to spice up my life a little bit. And one of my favorite street foods that I've ever tried in an Indian cuisine is called dahi batata puri, and it is shells with uh with potatoes in it, uh chickpeas in it, yogurt, the green chutney and then the brown chutney in it, and it's sweet and savory at the same time. You take one bite. Oh my God, you're in heaven. I've never had anything like this before. So, yeah. But with that being said, as we close out, what I can tell the audience, at least from my part, is Thanksgiving doesn't have to be a lonely holiday. It can be actually you sitting down with yourself and recollecting all the achievements that you've had throughout the year. We understand that there's a very dark history behind that. Absolutely. There's no denying about that. But those who don't have the privilege of hanging out with family members or anything like that, and then that's something that I do every single year in Thanksgiving. I don't have any family in California. And even when I did temporarily, I still didn't get to go to their homes. So I sat with myself, I listed down all the accomplishments for that year and what I want to accomplish next, and what blessings came towards me without even asking. And what am I thankful for that, right? I'm thankful that I can buy a fast food meal delivered to me through a delivery service. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the $15 to $20 that I spent. What else can you be thankful for, right? And then when you do get a chance, there are some, and Michelle, thank you for bringing this up as well earlier before the recording, some of the action items, right? And one of the action items I do recommend is yes, sit by yourself, make a list of all your accomplishments, and learn to be satisfied instead of chasing something that may or may not be there. And second, use social media and figure out a location where a lot of strangers are meeting together because you're not the only one in your situation. There's plenty of other people who are in the same boat as you. So why not take advantage of that? Go for it, and then eat the kind of food that you actually like to eat versus having turkey or whatever forced down your throat and you regretting it and spending extra money anyway. So might as well just treat yourself to something that you actually like. That's what I can say.
Oh, I am so thankful for all of you guys. I mean, we have spent some time together talking and learning and cultivating ideas. So I'm thankful for you all. But I also want to end on, first of all, giving people permission not to feel guilty. If you were whitewashed, if you grew up and did not know histories, or you're in a different area and you were never exposed to something, don't feel guilty for not knowing, but learn now, grow, heal, and start new traditions if it works for you. Be prepared because things change in life. You may move to a different location. You may have family that leaves through divorce or death or health issues. It's okay to change things up. So, whether it's because you don't want that bland turkey anymore, or because people are vegan or vegetarian now, it's okay to change. And it's okay to celebrate the old, and it's okay to move forward.
Thank you, Jackie. So I appreciate this global interaction with all of us. And I appreciate us sharing our stories because that's what we're all about. And we want to connect with people who may not be with us in person, but definitely can relate to us everywhere else. And that's what we want to do. We want to build a strong community. We want us to come together. It doesn't have to be music. It can be real life stories that can bring people together more than anything else that we can imagine. And I especially want to say thank you. Thank you, Jackie from Michigan. Thank you, Michelle from Ohio. Thank you, Sama, all the way from India. Thank you, Shaolin, my neighbor in California, specifically San Francisco. Thank you, Kimberly, my neighbor again from San Francisco, California. And then I see Teresa all the way from Canada. So, anyone listening, if you have any questions or if there's any specific topic that you want to talk about or learn more about, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach out to us via our website, ozkstudios.com or gfnstudios.com if you're specifically interested in learning about food. OZK Studios is our parent website where you can find all the information available about who we are and what we do. And we would love to hear from you as well. And also, that's the best place for you to know exactly what's coming up because we are so excited to launch our two different branches early 2025. So, with that being said, thank you so much. And we all look forward to learning about each other. Stay safe, stay humble, stay open, stay zealous, and stay kind.